In this video, we're going to talk about how to manage Azure Identities via OpenIAM, and um, this process consists of two preparation parts. The first part is connector preparation, and then the OpenIAM site preparation as well. We have a documentation page that is available here. And this page describes preparation steps for installing Microsoft Graph PowerShell connector. So there are several steps. So at different points of time, Microsoft had different modules for PowerShell modules for interacting with Azure identities, and the most recent one is for the March of 2025. It is a Microsoft Graph PowerShell module, and here is a link for Microsoft Graph PowerShell documentation. So it's possible to read it, but now what we are going to do now is installing a connector, OpenIAM connector, and there are several prerequisites. So first, we need at least Windows Server 2016 or upper. So it could be Windows Server 2025, but right now we have Windows Server 2016, and it is a clean one, the clean one, so it is like a minimal supported server. So we're going to work with this. There are several dependencies like .NET 4.8 and then Microsoft Graph PowerShell module, and of course it should be an internet connected machine, because it should connect to Azure tenant, because sometimes some environments are more restricted than other environments. So we have an empty machine, nothing is installed here. It is a test machine, and we have a connector here. If we go to properties and go to details, we will be able to see the version. It is 5.46.1.0, which is the latest version as for now. So as I mentioned, nothing is installed on this machine, so I will just go ahead and install a connector. And we see that could not find PowerShell Microsoft Graph module, so installer verifies dependencies, and so there are some prerequisites that needs to be done before installing it. So, and we can go just purely through this documentation. So it is an installation of .NET 4.8. This is as Windows Server 2016. So this .NET is not available out of the box. However, if it would have been a server of a higher version, that would be a part of it. So, but we picked Server 2016 just as an example of the lowest possible dependencies, like not dependency but environment. So now we need just to run apps, not to build apps here. I will take an offline installer just to speed up time of installation. And we'll install .NET 4.8. So this is a test machine that has just 8 gigs of RAM, 2 CPUs. So for test, it's more than enough. Connectors are very lightweight, so we have just a little bit of disk space here. So this test machine is hosted on Azure. And there are small disk images with 32 gigs of disk space, which is more than enough for test. Okay, so I'm installing .NET 4.8. In a real environment, it is recommended to get more disk space, of course, in the documentation. Where is it? Just 1 second, I will find it. Installing PowerShell connectors, if we go here, we mentioned that for production it's good to have at least this amount of resources. But, well, this is the minimum. And if you have more than 5,000 objects inside your managed system, that it is highly recommended to increase RAM at least to 16 gigs. There is a page for using PowerShell connectors, so it describes how to install different parameters inside connector.config, how to work with logs, so the log format and everything. Yeah, so the logs are stored by default in a SQLite database, but this could be a simple JSON file as well. Sometimes some customers want to install RabbitMQ connection as a TLS connection with untrusted certificate, but in that case, it's needed to be put inside the trusted people. So it takes just a little bit of time to install .NET. And I will return to this documentation. Okay, so looks like we have some progress here. On the initial screen of connector installer, we had a message that there is a dependency missing. The dependency was Microsoft Graph module, but the same check we do for .NET 4.8 as well. So We should have this in place in any case. Otherwise, it would not be possible to install. Okay, so it is in place now, and let's go for Microsoft Graph module. So I will open PowerShell with elevated permissions, and I will copy this command just to see if this module is already installed or not. So we run this module, we see nothing as we see here. So the next step is to install this module for all users. It takes a little bit of time. Yes, we want. Okay, so, and we see a lot of errors, and this is exactly what is described here in troubleshooting tip number 1. This is because this is Windows Server 2016, so we need to set up security protocol to TLS 1.2 at least before proceeding. So I'm doing this, and I'm repeating my previous command. Now it should work. Okay, yes, I agree. In the newer versions of Windows Server, it's possible to proceed without this, but just need to be aware of this on Windows Server 2016. So we see that the module is getting installed. Takes a little bit of time. This module is quite heavy. Okay, so meanwhile it installs it, we can actually open a different PowerShell window or even PowerShell ESI. Just to be able to pass several commands and see them all together. So I will copy this. So the authentication of the connector against Azure is done as via Azure application. So, and we need a certificate for this that we will generate right now. So this is the certificate CN. So we will just put any name here, for example, PS demo PS graph connector, and then we will need to create a certificate. It will be a self-signed one. The subject is this. The location is inside the local machine. We mark it as an exportable. I don't know, maybe sometimes we do not need this, for example. Sometimes we do. I don't know if we will need exactly the same certificate to be exported on different machines to be able to run exactly the same connector. Then, yeah, signature, keyspec, length, algorithm, hash, and we issue it for 10 years or whatever time you need. So I will just run it, and we have this certificate. Now if I go, well, I can do it right here. I start MMC and I open the certificate console. It is a computer account. So finish, okay, and now open it up, a personal one, and we see that this certificate is installed and we have it. So, and let's see meanwhile if, yeah, so the module is installed now, so we can proceed with other steps. So yeah, but this is the next step. We have a sum print. Let's just save this sum print somewhere. Let me open Notepad. And I will just store the output. Oops. We can get it in any case. Then we will need to run a registration script. So this registration script could be taken from official Microsoft documentation page. So I open this up and we see the script for application registration. So what I will do, I will just fully copy this script and I will paste it here, and I will save and call it something like, I don't know, Azure app, Azure app registration. Okay, so what we also will need to do, once we copy this script will require a certificate. So we will need to export a SER file out of the certificate with the key that is in our store. So I will go to all tasks and I will do export. And no, I don't want to export a private key. I just want a certificate. I want it in, let it be in their format by default. And let me call it like app cert. The name could be any. And I press next. The export is successful. Now if I go to documents, we have script, we have certificate, and now I press shift and I do copy as path, and now I will clean it just for better view, and I will return to a documentation page. So all we will need to do is to run this script. So um, I will go to the location, to the folder where this script is located, and now I will copy this. I don't know why I cannot type, it's strange. Okay, so the I don't need this, I will need only parameters. So parameter will be the application name, it's how it will be named in Azure. So I will call it, for example, demo PS graph connector. And the certificate path would be this one, so control click and then copy as path, and then I will replace it. So I have parameters for running PowerShell command. Now I do the registration. Let me recall how it's called. It's called Azure App registration. So, and I put my parameters here, and I'm running this as administrator. Well, but the only thing is, well, I will need to do, because again, it is Windows Server 2016. Again, we will need to do this. Otherwise, we would get this error here, just because of Windows Server 2016. So I do this, and now I will run my command with those parameters. Okay, so it will take just a little bit of time. Okay, so fair enough. To bypass this, I will go to server manager, to local server, and I just, for our simplicity, I will just disable security settings of Internet Explorer. So I'll just press close. No, of course it's failed. So we will retry it again. I will rerun this command. Oh no, okay, so probably we will need to close session, PowerShell session, so I will do exactly the same again. We'll run it as administrator, and then of course, because I didn't do this protocol thing. Again, I closed everything. Now I will do this part first. Then I will go to documents, and I will again redo this. So it should work now. Okay, yes, indeed, we see that it worked. Now I will input credentials for a test tenant that we have. Okay, so it is authenticated, and we will get several authentication requests. It's loading again. Okay, so now we have this registration with all data, like client ID, tenant ID, everything. It's possible to copy it. I don't know if it will be needed later, but maybe you can just keep it for your simplicity, because at some point you will need client ID, you will need probably tenant ID, but yeah, client ID you will need for sure. So it's possible to keep it. And now let's return to our documentation. And now we will need to grant admin consent on application permissions. So to do this, we will need to go to the portal. So I will, instead of this page, I will open portal, Azure portal, and we'll log in using the same credential, test credentials. Oh, I always answer no to such questions. Don't like to store my credentials. Okay, so we are logged in, and now we can copy this link. We can paste it here just for simplicity. And let's remember how we called our application. It was demo PS Graph Connector. Yes, so we see that it was created today. Yes, it is exactly the same application. And now we go to manage, we go to API permissions. And we see that the permissions are not yet granted. So that's exactly what we need to do on the Azure side. But just to save some time, let's check. Okay, but let me read a little bit more about this. User read all. So there are two permissions by default. So to be able to fully manage users, not just to read information about them, but to create users and modify them, we will need an additional permission here that is called user. User, then I think it's write all or something like this. Yeah, read write all. Yeah. Okay, so I will add this permission, and now I'm granting admin consent. Okay, so the it is granted, so we are good now. Setting API permissions. Yeah, so it is exactly what we just did. And now we go to the next section. So it tells that unfortunately, not all permissions can be set directly through API permissions page. And there is no way to grant permission for an application to reset the password. But there is a workaround actually. So this section needs to be done only in case if you will need to reset user password via OpenIAM connector. So let's assume that yes, in that case, we can do this through the Azure AD module. Unfortunately, it will be deprecated soon, but so far it is a workaround that we can do, but probably we will be able to do it in some other way as well later. But let's do what we can do now. And let's see if this module is available. No, it is not available because it is a fresh machine. So I will do this module installation as well. Yes, I want to do this. Okay, so I will do it once again. just to see changes. Yes, so we see this module is now in place. And now I do connect to Azure AD. Oops, what was copied here is not what I wanted. So now I copy from here to here. And now we have again window. Yeah, we are authenticated now. And now that's where we need a client ID. So let's grab it. Let's go to overview. And we will need this client ID to run the principal. So we will need a principal of this application. So we'll copy this command, but actually this identifier was some test identifier in the documentation that doesn't make any sense, of course. And now we will need our identifier. So let's do this. And let's verify that the principal is there. Yes, indeed. So we have application here, application ID, object, and everything. And the next one, we will get the role that is called user administrator. And we will, I don't know why I can't copy it. Copy. Then I do it like this, and let me verify that the role is here in place. Yes. And all we do is add Azure Active Directory role member, and we get that and we add that role to that principal. That's what we do. That's all. After those steps, connector will be able to reset user passwords. So now the next one is getting parameters for OpenIAM managed system. So what we will do, we will need the application client ID. It will go to login ID property. So let me maybe very quickly go to OpenIAM. I will log in like sysadmin. It's test user. And okay, so once we will let's see, graph. Yeah, so we have graph connector here. And this is where we will need the host URL. So okay, so here is login ID and host URL. So host URL will be our tenant, and the login ID will be a client ID. So that's what we saved here. Also, it is possible to see it on the page of application. So we have tenant ID and we have application ID here. So we will need this later to put inside OpenIAM configuration, and we will also need a password property, which is not a fully password. So you see that the password should be put as a thumbprint of the certificate that we generated ourselves. So I will go and I will open this certificate. It is a self-signed one. And if I scroll down, I see the thumbprint. So you can just copy this value. Yeah, and well, it's not in a very pretty format, but above was the good format of the thumbprint that was given to us by the comment. So let's go back to the documentation, and actually now there is a section. There is a section of with attributes that connector can work with by default. So it can work also with licensing. So there is an explanation about how licensing data should be populated. So we need to know the KU part numbers. So those are virtually names of the licenses that we can assign. So it is described how it's possible to get this from Azure. But that's in case if you need to work with licensing. And this is an explanation how to set up JSON inside the policy map, but this will be shown in the part when we will configure OpenIAM part. And there are a couple of queries how to get users, how to synchronize users from the tenant. So this is actually it. And actually now we completed all prerequisites for installing connector. We set everything up. Now we can just install it. Oh, actually, yeah. If you have PowerShell Graph module installed and .NET 8, it is enough just to install a connector. But in any case, you would need all those steps that we just done to get working connector. So I will leave location by default. Yeah, and I would like to see some debug logs, so it could be changed later in connector.config. I don't want to remove old logs. I would like to keep them virtually forever. Not a good option in production, of course, but we are in test. So, and we will need the host name of RabbitMQ, which is very often the host name or IP address of OpenIAM. So now we just use an IP address, which is a test one. And the queue, we can take the queue name from OpenIAM. So we see that, for example, managed system ID is Azure Graph MS. Okay, so let's go to connectors and let's find Azure. Okay, so there is an MS Graph connector as well. So, okay, so in any case, you can grab your connector and take connector queue from here and put it inside the queue. Let's do test connection to be sure that everything okay. Couldn't establish connection. It means that okay, yeah, fair enough. The password is different. I will put a different password for our test system. I do test connection now. Okay, so the connection is successful, and let's install a connector. Okay, so connector is installed, and we can assume that everything should be fine, but just to be prepared and just to avoid any possible mistakes abstractly, let's do one verification to see if it is possible to connect to the tenant using credentials that we are going to provide to OpenIAM. So I will clear my screen now, and if I do connect, and I will put mg graph, and then I will need the client ID, and let's take the client ID here. So that's okay. Well, let's scroll up just to be more visual. A client ID, which is a login ID in OpenIAM configuration property, will be later. And then we will also need tenant ID. So I will put tenant ID. Let me copy it from here. And we can connect using certificate print. And the certificate print was this one. So I will copy this. And that's all. Okay. So we see that we are connected because so we are in administrator mode, and so connection works well. So it means that once we do the same and set those values in OpenIAM, everything should work. So on this stage, we are done with the connector installation.